Hey guys, what's up? It's Brian coming at you with another modern deck tech, and this time we're our continuing our modern tribal series with our deck based in green. Now this one is our Hydra deck. It's pretty awesome. Hydras don't really interact with each other, so it's not strictly Hydra tribal, but it's a deck that interacts with +1/+1 counters and uses a lot of Hydras, because Hydras, I feel, are the best utilizers of gaining +1/+1 counters, because I don't know, they fit anywhere on the curve. You know, you've got a certain amount of mana at any point of time, so you can always basically play these guys, and they'll be, you know, slightly undervalued creatures, but we got some other cards in here that will make them super overvalue. Overvalue? Is that how? Anyways, let's get into it. So we got the three main Hydras in here is Feral Hydra, Mistcutter Hydra, and Protean Hydra. Now these Hydras are all X and 1, so you can pay anything for X and 1 green. And then they enter the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. So for, you know, whatever turn it is, however lands you have to play, you'll probably just tap out and play a Hydra for as much as you can. So this Feral Hydra, all these Hydras have secondary abilities as well, but this Feral Hydra has tap 3 colorless, put a +1/+1 counter on Hydra. So you can grow this. You can grow this Hydra as much as you want. It's not a tap ability, so however many lands you have is how much bigger you can make him. Now it says any player may activate this ability. I assume this is for like team games, but you know that doesn't really matter for you. Basically, this is your ability. This is all for you. You can keep it and treasure it for a lifetime. Anyways, Mistcutter Hydra. This is probably one of my favorite Hydras out here. The haste, so it can't be countered. It has haste and protection from blue. The haste is amazing. Later in the game, when you're looking to finish, this is the guy you're looking to draw into, because you can tap out, boom, swing for like a billion, not a billion, but a lot. Really, really good, and it hoses any deck that relies on countering anything or has any sort of blue removal. I mean, Vapor Snag, which is a 1-drop instant that says return target creature to its owner's hand, and then they lose 1 life. That's really awful for you because, actually, no, excuse me, let me take that back. That's actually a really good thing for you, because then that lets you play your Hydra for bigger, because that'll assume that you have more mana. But it doesn't mean that you'll have to tap out for that Hydra. But this guy doesn't get Vapor Snagged, or any other sort of blue removal spells, what have you. Next, we got our Protean Hydra. So this guy's got kind of a wall of text on him, but ultimately it says, if damage would be dealt to him, prevent that damage. Remove that many counters instead. Then at the end step, double those counters. Like, the counters that you removed, put double that back on. I guess I could have just read you can read the card. This is a really cool Hydra flavor-wise, I think, because the Hydra from, you know, Hercules mythology, you cut off a head, 2 grows back. I mean, this is literally that. So it's a really cool Hydra, and it's really, really strong with some of the other cards we got out here. So our last Hydra is not one of our main guys, because it's an X and 2 green, so it's a little bit more expensive, but this card is so strong. Now it comes into play with X counters, just like any Hydra should, but at your upkeep, I should say, you double the number of +1/+1 counters on Primary Hydra, and then if he has 10 or more counters, he's got Trample. Trample is really important, because, you know, you could be swinging in with a 20/20, but if they block with a 1/1, then yeah, you don't take the damage, or they don't take the damage. So yeah, this is really important. Now let's talk real quick about our mana acceleration. We got Birds of Paradise, great card. You know, this is the green 1-drop that if you're playing green, you should probably have. Mana acceleration is pretty important in Modern. Just because, so you can get to that turn 4 win, or, you know, be really in a good situated place at turn 4. And then our other mana acceleration is Gyre Sage. Now this is a 2-drop, 1/2, and it adds a green mana for each +1/+1 counter on Gyre Sage when you tap it. It also has Evolve, which says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control that has greater power or toughness than this creature, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. So that's how you get the counters onto the Gyre Sage. And the interesting thing is that if you play a Gyre Sage and then play a Hydra that has power greater than Gyre Sage, from then on, you will, if you tap out, every single Hydra will put a +1/+1 counter on Gyre Sage, just because she'll be tapping for more mana, or they will be tapping for more mana. Yeah, so those are our mana accelerants, and this guy can get really, really big. You can actually win by attacking with your Gyre Sage, just because it gets so many counters on it. Finally, our last creature is a Corpsejack Menace. 2 black-green for a 4/4, and it says if you would put a counter, 1 or more +1/+1 counters on it, instead put twice as much of that. So anytime a counter would be placed on anything, twice as much, which is amazing with Gyre Sage, because that just explodes your mana acceleration so much. And then you're playing Primordial Hydras and all your other Hydras. I mean, like, all your other creatures can take advantage of your mana acceleration immensely. So that's all our creatures. Let's look at our lands: just Forest, Overgrown Tombs, and Verdant Catacombs. We only have 2 black sources, so only having 8 black sources in our 21 lands is not a problem. We've got 2 enchantments. So we got our Hardened Scales, and this is kind of like the Corpsejack Menace. It says that if 1 or more would be put on, you put that total +1. So like if I play a Feral Hydra and I pay 3 mana for it, so X equals 2. When it comes into play, it gets X +1. Yeah, pretty simple. And you can stack these. You can play as many. You can play. If you have 4 of them in play, then they get X +4. That's how the triggers stack. Rancor is really important for this deck because it gives trample. It also gives +2/+0, but the trample is really important. And also, if the creature dies, so if Rancor is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, it goes back to your hand, which is so strong. The trample is really important, like I said, because if you're swinging it with a 10/10 and they block with their 1/1, whatever. And then finally, Abrupt Decay. Great card, can't be countered by spells or abilities, and you destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. So, I mean, there a lot of cards in Modern cost 3 or less, because turn 4 is such an important turn. You want to get all your different pieces out before that. So, Abrupt Decay is really very good. You would sideboard it out against things like Tron, I would say, but I won't really go into sideboard. Sideboard is really dependent on the meta, and meta can be very local for some people, so I don't want to impose any ideas. If you do have any questions about sideboard or possible sideboard, just comment below. I want to talk real quick about some of the cool interactions in this deck. So first, Protean Hydra. An interesting thing is that this guy doesn't die to Death Touch, because it says if damage would be dealt, prevent that damage. So the damage is never dealt, so the Death Touch never applies. This also applies for Lifelink. Damage is prevented, and other on-hit abilities, I guess. So that's really cool. Corpsejack Menace and Hardened Scales, the +1 from the Hardened Scales does not get doubled by the Corpsejack Menace. Instead, this goes, so the +1 is placed instead. So that is then the thing that gets doubled instead of the base gets doubled, and well, I guess that ends up as the same. There might be situations where it's not, but both of these say twice that many instead, and +1 instead. So there might be some weird counting rules that you might have to ask your local judges about. This is a very math heavy deck, especially when you get your counter multipliers out. So Feral Hydra, of course, when you have a Corpse Jack Menace out or Hardened Scales out, his secondary ability becomes really, really strong, as well as Protean Hydra's ability, because it doesn't come back as twice as many, it comes back as twice as many times 2 or +1, so also very strong. And of course, Primordial Hydra really, really, really enjoys having Hardened Scales or Corpse Jack Menace out, because it's doubling at the upkeep, so any sort of counter acceleration, like, I don't know, just makes this explode. I think this is a really fun deck. It really is well situated at anywhere on the curve, because you're utilizing all your mana for each creature that you play. And I think it flows really well. I mean, I'd love to see someone take this to an FNM. If you like the deck, though, make sure you drop a like. If you don't like the deck, make sure you drop a like anyways. It really helps out. But and again, I didn't address the sideboard because the sideboard is really meta dependent. Finally, if there's a deck that you'd like to see me brew, or like a card that you'd like to see me brew around, make sure you drop a like. Or a deck that you want to see in a matchup, me and Colin do. Also, I mean, drop a comment. That's what I meant to say. Mention it in the comments below. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe for more modern tribal, modern content, and I'll see you around.